We have seen elements of Tren De Aragua in that organization here in Utah. Not so much what we've seen nationally, but we do see a little bit of their trends, tactics, procedures, and activity here in Utah.
And when you say activity, what do you mean?
Criminal activity. The organization nationally has certain trends and criminal behavior that we've seen nationally, and we've seen some of that here in Utah.
What kind of crimes?
Wide variety of crimes, very similar to other organized crime, gang activity. Largely, we're looking at retail theft, burglary, drug distribution, sextortion, extortion, fraud, things of those nature.
And when you say retail crime, how does the enterprise work? What's the advantage to the gang of retail crime?
Yeah, we've seen it for several years. A lot of criminal organizations will look at large retailers and find ways to exploit their organizations by stealing as much product as they can right from their store and fleeing as quickly as possible.
And what do they do with it?
They'll redistribute it, sell it on the black market for a lower price, and then take those funds and use those to enhance their criminal organization.
Okay. In terms of burglaries, what kind of burglaries are we talking about?
We've seen here in Utah nationally burglaries where it's a home invasion and they're going in and looking for firearms, valuable electronics, things of that nature.
What about sextortion?
Yeah, we know that nationally this gang is used prostitution and as part of their criminal organization and have forced women into labor, committed sex acts, and we've seen that here in Utah as well.
Where in Utah?
That specific crime all over. We've identified social media posts, online advertisements offering this type of service. We've seen officers interact with individuals that have been affected by this organization and say that they have been, forced to participate in these crimes.
And in what way is Tren De Aragua forcing women into prostitution?
It's human trafficking. They're forcing them by if they bring them here, there's a fee that once they get here, they have to work off their fee, and that takes years to do. And the best way to do it is to participate in that type of crime. They're forced physically through violence, forced by threatening their families back home in their country.
And these are women who have tried to escape Venezuela. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
And so the Tren De Aragua is running the operation here, but it's also running the smuggling operation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So the whole pipeline from Venezuela all the way to Utah for these girls is controlled by this gang.
Yeah, and that's a trend and a tactic that we've seen here in Utah and we've seen nationally, that forced labor.
How old are these girls?
We've received reporting throughout the nation that they can be young as 13 and up to their 20s.
And is that happening here too with underage girls?
We've seen young ages, not quite 13, but we've definitely seen advertisements for young ages online, and we know that that's what we're looking for.
And to quantify, how big is this, particularly this sextortion operation? How large might it be in Utah?
That's hard to tell. We're still trying to analyze it and understand it. Like I said, we've seen online ads, so we know that it exists, and we know that they're trying to promote that type of criminal activity here in Utah. But I don't know how to quantify it just yet as we kind of look deeper into the crime and the criminal activity associated with it.
Are there other serious crimes that Tren De Aragua is involved with here in the state?
Yeah, one of the biggest concerns is with any criminal organization, they're trying to create a footprint and control area. So gang violence among other gang members and confrontations causes concern with firearms assaults and aggravated assaults and concerns of that type of behavior.
And is it Venezuelan gang Tren De Aragua against another Venezuelan gang, or Tren De Aragua against a gang from another part of South America, or a homegrown gang?
Yeah, I think we'd see both, and we have seen both here and nationally, where they're trying to create a footprint and kind of organize their operation, and they'll cause violence against other gang members of their own, or look at other gangs that have a foothold on distribution of narcotics and other gun trafficking crimes, and they'll do both.
So in Herriman, there was a shooting in late September involving what police described as two Venezuelan groups, or Venezuelan groups, perhaps more than two. One of the individuals, the suspected shooter, apparently had an automatic rifle. Do you have any information as to how he was able to obtain that gun?
I can't speak specifically to that investigation because I believe Herriman's looking closely at it and trying to identify where that individual obtained the firearm. But generally speaking, these type of criminal organizations can get it in a number of ways. It's that home invasion robbery. They can obtain it through the black market. They can obtain it through firearms trafficking. And purchase from other places throughout the nation, or down in South and Central America, and bring it up here.
Do you have any sense as to how many Tren De Aragua gang members may be living and operating in Utah?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're still looking at that and trying to analyze and see what type of footprint they have here. As I indicated, we know that criminal organization is here, and that it's throughout the nation as well, in the thousands. But here locally, one of the issues is Tren De Aragua doesn't identify themselves like other gangs do, so it's hard to know which one's a gang member and participates with that organization and which one doesn't, because we know that there's a lot of South and Central Americans here in Utah that have come here and are looking for a safe place to live and not part of that organization.
So is DPS actively working to try to figure out how big the footprint is?
Yeah, we work closely with our federal and local partners on a daily basis, trying to, especially with our gang detectives, and looking at the trends, tactics, procedures of this criminal organization, and understanding how many there are, why they're here, how we can minimize any criminal activity. We also look at nationally where this organization has grown in some of our neighboring states. We've seen that, and we're monitoring that closely, and we take it very seriously. And we'll continue to try and identify their trends and make sure that we can promote public safety and make sure that they can expand their criminal organization.
So where in Utah specifically could be the epicenter for Tren De Aragua right now?
Yeah, we've seen activity in the Salt Lake Valley, and also more south of the Wasatch Front. We've seen activity there as well.
And when you say south of the Wasatch Front, meaning where exactly?
South end of Salt Lake County and Utah County.
Okay, so Herriman is one place where the shooting occurred. Is Herriman one of the cities? Is Riverton one of the cities?
Yeah, we look at that area of concern. We've seen the criminal activity there, so we know that there is some Tren De Aragua gang activity that's happening there. That's certainly a location that we're looking at.
Okay, Bluffdale too.
Yeah.
So those three communities would be maybe the epicenter. Where else besides those cities?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the epicenter, but as I said, I do know that we've seen it in the Salt Lake Valley, Salt Lake City area, and then towards the south end of Salt Lake County and into Utah County.
What are you doing differently in terms of addressing gang issues now that Tren De Aragua is here?
Yeah, I think there's not one silver bullet when trying to find a solution with this type of gang activity. But most importantly is the prevention and intervention and ensuring that gangs don't have the ability to promote and recruit, especially among the youth, and looking towards educating the youth and communities that might be vulnerable to that type of recruitment, and encouraging those communities to identify any of that criminal activity and ensure that it's not growing. And then our law enforcement takes a stronger approach to making sure we investigate the criminal activity behind these organizations and share that information so that all law enforcement in the state is aware of those threats.
Are you able to point to any arrests or convictions here in the state that are directly tied to Tren De Aragua?
There have been several incidents, especially over the last year. Those are still ongoing investigations. But local law enforcement has indicated that they have evidence that some of this these crimes have been committed by Tren De Aragua.
Are you able to elaborate any further on what those crimes are?
Yeah, we've seen crimes of aggravated assault, firearms crimes, counterfeit checks, organized retail crime, looking into that, sextortion and prostitution as well, home invasion.
Should people be alarmed by this?
I think any violence is unacceptable, especially in a safe state like ours, and we take it very seriously, and we're concerned about it. These are very small percentages of incidents that have occurred, and we're monitoring it closely. Gang activity has existed in Utah for quite some time, and this kind of just fits in with the rest of the criminal activity. But we're certainly alarmed of the trend nationally and what we've seen in other states, and we're paying close attention to that.
In terms of, and we've delved into this a little bit already, but should people be concerned that they could be a victim of Tren De Aragua when they had really no association with gangs or this organization at all? Are these, in some cases, random crimes or crimes that are targeted to people who really wouldn't be on the radar necessarily for criminal activity or gang activity, or be susceptible or vulnerable to that?
Yeah, this criminal organization, like many, will have altercations among other criminals, and a lot of the violent incidents that occur usually is gang related versus another gang, and the firearms incidents and drug distribution. That's all generally pretty focused on other criminal activity. And we haven't seen a lot of circumstances where these individuals have been physically violent with just your normal citizen that isn't committing that type of criminal activity.
So it's gang on gang, primarily.
Yeah, yeah.
When you look at Colorado, much has been said about Colorado. Oh, it's hyperbole, it's overblown. Other people say, no, it's not overblown, it's very real. There seem to be contradictory statements from public officials there. One says, yes, it's a serious concern. Another says, oh, you're making a lot out of nothing. How do you view that?
Yeah, I don't think you can take this type of crime lightly. I think is the percentages of these crimes are still relatively low compared to other crimes, which doesn't sound the alarm perhaps, but at the same time, any criminal activity, especially when you're dealing with sextortion and violence and firearms, you have to take that seriously.
And are you worried that Tren De Aragua may be metastasizing really close to Utah's border?
We're looking at that closely. At this time, we feel confident that it won't grow at an immense rate and that we have good prevention and intervention within our communities to ensure that we can keep our neighborhoods safe and we won't see that criminal violence like we have seen in other cities.
For decision makers, for legislators, what do you think they should be doing to curb the growth of Tren De Aragua and some other gangs from Central and South America?
We're always interested in making sure that we have the capability as law enforcement to investigate and hold those accountable for these serious crimes. And so we're always working with policymakers to ensure that the laws meet the crime and that those that are charged with those crimes are held accountable, and it sends a message throughout the community of these gang members that here in Utah we take it seriously.
And to that end, are the criminal penalties tough enough in your view now?
They can, sometimes they are. Every case is different. It depends on the evidence with the case and the crimes committed. We see some individuals that receive sentencing that is appropriate, and some based off of the evidence and the circumstances. They are let out, and we'll find them again on the streets.
And what evidence do you see right now that Tren De Aragua gang members who have been accused of crimes have basically been able to get out of jail quickly, what some people call catch and release?
Yeah, we see that with all kind of criminal behavior. Again, it just depends. It's a case by case basis, depending on the victim, the circumstances of the crime, the evidence. All of those play a factor. But if we're looking at a serious crime and we have good participation from the victim and the witnesses, we feel confident that the justice system here in Utah works well.
In terms of the shooting on September 22nd in Herriman, can you confirm that there was Tren De Aragua, that there were Tren De Aragua members who were involved in that altercation?
You'd have to talk to the local agency on that. I can say that definitely based off of some of the information coming from the investigation, that there's those trends, tactics, and procedures that are consistent with that criminal organization.
We've asked Herriman Police repeatedly for additional information to elaborate on that situation, and we haven't received a reply. Our local police departments, including Herriman, reticent to acknowledge Tren De Aragua.
I can't speak on the behalf of the investigating agency, but I can say that these investigations, especially when you're dealing with a serious criminal element like this, the investigation goes on for some time, and they've got to do their due diligence to look deeply into all of the facts and work closely with the district attorney's office to ensure that the evidence is looked at thoroughly.
You've been candid in this interview, so we appreciate that. But if there is hesitancy among police departments to identify Tren De Aragua in their communities, is that not serving the public interest? Is it not calling this criminal activity by name? Is that somehow not providing transparency to the people they are pledged to serve.
Yeah, I think law enforcement here in the state really supports the idea of being transparent in their operations. When you're looking at a criminal organization like Tren De Aragua, they are very smart when it comes to concealing their connection to the organization. They don't have the same tattoos or wear the same colors as other gangs that you were accustomed to. And so to label them specifically, especially this close to the start of an investigation, is difficult. And so I think law enforcement needs to be diligent in identifying the gang activity associated with those crimes, so that we're not labeling individuals specifically prior to the conclusion of an investigation.
So if they don't have the same tattoos and they're not easily identifiable and they try to conceal, how do you identify them?
Yeah, it's difficult. One of the most difficult ways to identify them is tracking where their illegal proceeds are being sent to. They're being sent back to the criminal organization. The biggest thing we're looking at right now is the trends and the tactics and the procedures that are consistent with other criminal activity throughout the country. And that for us is the biggest indication that this criminal organization is here in Utah, and we're looking at those trends closely.
So the funds are going back to the organization, and the organization is still based in Venezuela, or is it someplace else?
Yeah, that's what we'd look at, and that's the best way to identify the criminal activity is tracing the money and seeing where that's going to.
And Utah investigators are doing that all the way back to South America.
Locally and nationally, our state, federal, local partners, that's a big part of understanding the threat and understanding the prevalence of this criminal organization and how it functions.
Well, Captain, we appreciate it.